My son wrote, "Don't call me anymore. I'm tired of you and your requests." I said nothing. 2 months later, he called. "Mom, my wife and I urgently need money for rent." I replied, "I'm sorry, I don't know who you are. I don't have a son," and hung up. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. I had always believed that motherhood was forever. That no matter what storms came, the bond between mother and child would weather them all. For 63 years, I'd lived by that philosophy, raising my son Daniel in our modest home in Ohio, working double shifts as a nurse to give him everything he needed after his father left us when he was just 7. Daniel grew up, went to college, got married to a woman named Amber, and started his own life. I was proud. Wasn't that what every mother wanted? But somewhere along the way, the phone calls became requests. The visits became transactions. "Mom, can you help us with the down payment?" "Mom, we need money for Amber's medical bills." "Mom, just this once for the car repair." I said yes, every single time. What else would a mother do? The pattern became clearer over the years, though I refused to see it. Daniel would disappear for weeks, sometimes months. No calls, no texts, no visits. Then suddenly, he'd reappear with that familiar tone in his voice, the one that said he needed something. And I'd open my wallet, my heart still hoping that this time, he'd stay longer. That this time, we'd actually talk about something other than money. Last spring, I called him on his birthday. Amber answered. "He's busy," she said curtly. I could hear Daniel in the background laughing at something on TV. "Tell him I love him," I said softly. She hung up without responding. 2 weeks later, I called again. I'd been feeling unwell, and my doctor had scheduled some tests. I just wanted to hear my son's voice. Daniel answered this time, and I could hear the irritation immediately. "Mom, what is it now?" he asked. "I just wanted to talk, sweetheart. I haven't heard from you I'm in the middle of something." "It'll just take a minute. I wanted to tell you that Mom, seriously, I don't have time for this." My chest tightened. "Daniel, I'm your mother. I just need—" That's when he said it. The words that would replay in my mind for the next 2 months, like a broken record. "Don't call me anymore. I'm tired of you and your requests." My requests? What requests had I ever made of him? The line went dead. I sat there in my kitchen, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone. The afternoon sun streamed through the window, illuminating the photographs on my refrigerator. Daniel as a baby, Daniel's graduation, Daniel's wedding. In every photo, I was smiling, proud, loving. Had I been blind this entire time? I didn't call again. Not the next day, not the next week. I went to my doctor's appointments alone. I had my tests done alone. When the results came back negative, just stress, the doctor said, I celebrated alone with a cup of tea in my empty kitchen. 8 weeks passed. 8 weeks of silence. 8 weeks of learning what it meant to be truly alone. I started attending a book club at the library. I volunteered at the local animal shelter. I discovered that life could exist without waiting for the phone to ring. Then, on a Tuesday evening in July, my phone buzzed. Daniel's name flashed across the screen. My hand hovered over it. Something inside me had shifted during those 8 weeks. Something had crystallized into a cold, hard truth that I could no longer ignore. I answered. "Mom?" His voice was different now. Urgent. Almost panicked. "Mom, Amber and I really need your help. We're behind on rent and we need $2,000 by Friday or we're getting evicted. Can you transfer it today? No apology." No, "How are you?" No acknowledgement of what he'd said 2 months ago. Just another request. Another demand. The words came out of my mouth before I'd even fully formed the thought. They were calm, cold, final. "I'm sorry, I don't know who you are. I don't have a son." I hung up. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Clarity. Sharp, crystal clear clarity about what I had to do next. The phone rang again within minutes. Then again. Then again. 15 calls in the first hour. I turned it off and sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by a silence that felt both terrifying and liberating. What had I just done? I made myself a cup of chamomile tea and opened my laptop. If I was going to do this, if I was really going to stand my ground, I needed to understand exactly what I was standing against. I needed to see the truth in black and white. I started with my bank statements. The numbers told a story I'd been too blind or too desperate to see. Over the past 5 years, I'd given Daniel and Amber $63,000. $63,000. I scrolled through the transactions, my tea growing cold beside me. Down payment for their house, $15,000. Amber's medical emergency, $8,000. Car repairs, $4,000. Furniture for the nursery when Amber was pregnant. A pregnancy that ended in a miscarriage, she'd said, $6,000. Credit card debt, $12,000. Legal fees for a case Daniel never explained, $9,000. Rent, utilities, groceries, an endless stream of emergencies that always seemed to happen right when I'd received my pension payment or a little extra from picking up overtime shifts at the hospital. I'd continued working as a nurse until I was 61, 2 years past my planned retirement, because I kept telling myself they needed me. Just one more year. Just until they got on their feet. But here was the pattern, stark and undeniable. They'd never gotten on their feet, because they'd never had to. I'd always been there, the safety net that never said no. I pulled out a notepad and began writing, not just the money, but everything else. The missed Thanksgivings when they'd promised to come, but canceled last minute. The Christmas when I'd spent the entire day alone because Amber's family needed them more. The time I'd fallen and broken my wrist, and Daniel hadn't visited once during my 6-week recovery. The birthday cards I'd sent that were never acknowledged, the messages left unread. How many times had I made excuses for them? They're busy, they're young, they're under stress. Marriage is hard. When had I stopped being a mother and become just an ATM machine? My phone was still off, but I could imagine the messages piling up. Probably not apologies. Probably anger. How dare I hang up on him? How dare I refuse to help? The fear crept in then. Not fear of Daniel's anger. I'd weathered that before. But fear of the unknown. What did a mother do when she decided to stop being a mother? Or rather, when she decided to stop letting herself be used under the guise of motherhood? I thought about my own mother, who had passed away 15 years ago. She'd been tough, pragmatic, a woman who'd survived the Depression and raised 6 children with iron will and tender heart. What would she tell me now? "Betty," I could almost hear her say, "you taught that boy to walk. You can teach him to stand on his own 2 feet too, even if it breaks your heart to do it." My hands steadied. I opened a new document on my laptop and titled it, Plan of Action. First, I needed to protect my finances. Tomorrow, I would go to the bank and make sure Daniel had no access to any of my accounts. I'd added him as an authorized contact years ago, just in case of emergencies. That needed to end. Second, I needed documentation. I would print out every bank statement, every text message, every piece of evidence that showed the pattern. Not because I wanted to hurt Daniel, but because I needed to see the truth myself. And if he came at me with accusations or demands, I needed to be able to show him, show myself, what had really been happening. Third, I needed advice. Legal advice, perhaps. I wasn't planning to sue my own son, but I needed to know my rights. What if he showed up at my door? What if he tried to force his way in? What if Amber made accusations against me? The thought chilled me. I didn't know Amber well. She'd always kept me at arm's length. But I knew she was Daniel's primary influence. The coldness in his voice had started after they got married. Or had I just not noticed it before? I turned my phone back on. 47 missed calls. 32 text messages. I didn't read them. Instead, I called my closest friend, Margaret, whom I'd met at the hospital 3 decades ago. "Betty? I was just thinking about you," she answered warmly. "Margaret," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "I need your help, and I need you to not judge me for what I'm about to tell you. Honey, I've known you for 30 years. Nothing you say could make me judge you." I told her everything. When I finished, there was a long pause. "It's about damn time," Margaret finally said. Wednesday morning, I walked into First National Bank at 9 o'clock sharp. I'd barely slept, but I'd never felt more awake. Margaret had stayed on the phone with me until midnight, helping me organize my thoughts, and in the morning, she'd insisted on driving me to the bank herself. "You're not doing this alone," she'd said firmly. "Not anymore." The banker, a young woman named Jessica, who'd helped me open my savings account years ago, smiled as I sat down. "Mrs. Patterson, how can I help you today?" "I need to remove my son from all my accounts," I said. "Checking, savings, everything. And I need to make sure no one but me can access them." Jessica's smile faltered slightly. "Oh, is everything all right?" "It will be," I said. The process took 45 minutes. Paperwork, signatures, new PIN numbers. Daniel would receive a notification letter within 5 business days, Jessica explained. Until then, technically he could still access the accounts, but Jessica flagged them with a note that any unusual activity should be reported to me immediately. "Is there anything else?" she asked gently. Something in her eyes told me she understood more than she was saying. How many other mothers sat in this office, protecting themselves from their own children? "Yes," I said. "I'd like to speak with someone about estate planning. My will needs to be updated." Margaret squeezed my hand as we left the bank. "You're doing the right thing, Betty." Was I? The doubt crept in as we drove back to my house, but when I turned my phone back on, the doubt evaporated. 53 new messages. I opened the text thread. Daniel. "Mom, this isn't funny. Call me back. Daniel. We're serious about the eviction. We need that money today. Daniel. Mom? Amber. Hi, Betty. This is Amber. I don't know what's going on, but Daniel is really stressed. We genuinely need help, and it's cruel of you to ignore us like this. Daniel. You know what? Fine. Be that way. Don't come crying to us when you're old and alone and need help. Amber. We've always been there for you, Betty. This is how you repay us? Always been there for me? I read that message 3 times, my anger building with each pass. When? When had they been there? When I broke my wrist? When I had my cancer scare last year? When I'd called, lonely and frightened, and got sent to voicemail? Then came the message that changed everything. Amber, you're a bitter old woman. Daniel only stayed in touch with you because I told him he should. He wanted to cut you off years ago. You should be grateful we even bothered with you. I stared at the screen. Read it again. Then I took a screenshot. There it was. The truth, unvarnished and ugly. Daniel had wanted to cut me off years ago, but they'd kept me around for my money. Amber had just admitted it in writing. Margaret looked over my shoulder and inhaled sharply. Oh, Betty, my hands weren't shaking. They should have been. I should have been crying. Instead, I felt that same cold clarity settling over me like armor. I want to forward this to someone, I said. Someone who can advise me. Is that crazy? Who? There's a lawyer who goes to my book club, Patricia Mendez. She specializes in elder law. I'd never thought I'd need an elder law attorney. That was for people with dementia, with children fighting over inheritances, with complicated family dynamics. But wasn't that exactly what this was? A complicated family dynamic where I was being exploited? I emailed Patricia that afternoon, forwarding the screenshot along with a brief explanation. She called me within 2 hours. Mrs. Patterson, I'm going to be direct with you, Patricia said after I'd explained the full situation. What you're describing is financial exploitation. It's more common than you'd think, and yes, it often happens with adult children. The good news is that you've already taken the most important step. You've stopped the flow of money. But we need to make sure you're protected moving forward. Protected how? Restraining order if necessary, documentation of all communication, updated power of attorney papers that explicitly exclude Daniel and Amber, a new will. And frankly, Mrs. Patterson, you need to prepare for the possibility that they might escalate. Escalate how? Show up at your house, make accusations, try to turn other family members against you. This is where it gets difficult. When you cut off someone who's been exploiting you, they don't usually go quietly. That night, I compiled everything. Bank statements going back 7 years. Every text message, every email, every voicemail. I created a folder on my computer labeled Documentation and backed it up to a flash drive that I kept in my safe. Daniel called at 10 p.m. I didn't answer. He called again at 10:30, at 11, at midnight. At 1 a.m., he sent a final message. We know where you live, Mom. We're coming over tomorrow to talk sense into you. I forwarded it to Patricia immediately. Her response came 3 minutes later. Call the police if they show up and refuse to leave. I'm drafting a cease and desist letter right now. I didn't sleep that night, but I wasn't afraid. Instead, I spent the dark hours preparing for war. They arrived at 11 a.m. on Thursday. I watched from my window as Daniel's beaten Honda pulled into my driveway. Both of them got out, Daniel looking haggard, unshaven, wearing sweatpants and a stained t-shirt, and Amber, dressed surprisingly well in business casual clothes, her blonde hair pulled back in a severe ponytail. I'd prepared for this. Margaret was in my living room, sitting quietly on the couch. Patricia had advised me to have a witness present. I'd also called the non-emergency police line that morning and explained the situation. Officer Rodriguez had been sympathetic and had taken down my address. If you feel threatened at any point, call 911 immediately, he'd said. The doorbell rang, then pounding. Mom, open up. We need to talk. I opened the door but kept the chain lock engaged. Hello, Daniel. His face was red, angry. What the hell is this about? Why are you ignoring us? Why won't you help? I told you. I don't have a son who speaks to me the way you did 2 months ago. That was, he sputtered. I was stressed. I didn't mean it. You're really going to hold that against me? Amber pushed forward, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Betty, please. Can we just come in and talk like adults? No, I said simply. No. Amber's mask slipped for a second. We're family. Are we? I kept my voice level. When did you last visit me without needing money? When did you last call just to see how I was doing? That's not fair, Daniel's voice rose. We're busy. We have lives. You can't expect us to drop everything for you all the time. I'm not asking you to drop everything for me, I said. I'm asking you to treat me like a human being instead of an ATM. Oh, here we go. Amber rolled her eyes. The martyr act. You gave us money because you wanted to. We never forced you. I pulled out my phone and read from Amber's text. You should be grateful we even bothered with you. The color drained from Amber's face. Get off our property, Daniel suddenly shouted. This is harassment. This is my property, Daniel. You're the ones who need to leave. You can't do this, his voice cracked. We're going to get evicted. We have nowhere to go. What kind of mother? What kind of son, I interrupted, tells his mother not to call him anymore, then calls 2 months later demanding money? Amber's face twisted into something ugly. You selfish bitch! You're sitting in this house alone with all your pension money while your own son is about to be homeless. You should be ashamed. I'm not ashamed, I said quietly. Not anymore. We could sue you, Amber shrieked. Elderly abuse. You promised to help us. We have emails. Actually, I said, I've been documenting everything, including the text where you admitted Daniel only stayed in touch because you told him to, including the $63,000 I've given you over 5 years with no repayment, no thank you, and no reciprocation. My attorney would be very interested in your lawsuit. The word attorney landed like a bomb. They both froze. You got a lawyer? Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. Yes. To do what? To sue your own son? To protect myself from being exploited. Amber grabbed Daniel's arm. Come on. We're wasting our time with this crazy old woman. Let her rot here alone. But Daniel was staring at me with something I couldn't quite read. Shock? Betrayal? For a moment, I saw the little boy he'd been, the one who'd climbed into my lap when he had nightmares, the one who'd made me Mother's Day cards with crooked hearts. Then Amber yanked him away, and the moment passed. You'll regret this, Amber shouted from the driveway. When you're dying in some nursing home with no one to visit you, you'll remember this day. They drove off, tires squealing. I closed the door and slid down against it, my legs finally giving out. Margaret rushed over, wrapping her arms around me. You did it, honey. You did it. I'd been so strong during the confrontation. But now, in the safety of my own home with my best friend beside me, I finally let myself cry. Not for Daniel. Not anymore. But for the mother I'd been. For the illusions I'd held. For the love I'd given that had been weaponized against me. Patricia called that afternoon. The cease and desist letter is ready. It gives them formal notice that any further harassment will result in legal action. How are you feeling? Exhausted, I admitted. Good. That means you're processing. Take a few days, Betty. Rest. Don't engage with them at all. You've won this round, but they might try again. You need to be ready. For the next 4 days, I did exactly that. I turned off my phone. I watched old movies. Margaret brought me soup and sat with me in companionable silence. I slept 12 hours some nights, my body finally releasing years of tension. On Monday, I felt human again, stronger, clearer, and ready for whatever came next. The letter arrived on Tuesday. Not from Patricia, not from the court. A handwritten envelope with Daniel's messy scrawl, addressed simply to Mom. I held it over the trash can for a full minute before deciding to open it. Margaret was with me. She'd been stopping by every day, bringing groceries and company. Want me to read it first? She offered. No, I need to do this. The letter was 3 pages long, written on lined notebook paper. Dear Mom, I don't even know where to start. I've been up all night thinking about what happened. Amber said I shouldn't write this, but I feel like I need to reach out. You're my mother. We're family. We can't let things end like this. I'm sorry for what I said 2 months ago. I was under a lot of stress at work and I took it out on you. That wasn't fair. You've always been there for me, and I should have appreciated it more. The truth is, Mom, we're in real trouble. Not just the rent, though that's part of it. Amber's been diagnosed with something serious, and we need money for treatment. I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want to worry you, but the medical bills are crushing us. We're drowning. I know I haven't been the best son. I know I've let you down, but I'm asking you, please, to help us one more time. Not for me, for Amber. She's scared, Mom. Really scared. And I don't know what else to do. We could lose everything. Our apartment, our car, our whole life. And the medical bills just keep coming. If you could just lend us $10,000, we could get back on our feet. I promise, I'll pay you back this time. Every cent. With interest. Please don't abandon us when we need you most. I love you, Mom. I know I don't say it enough, but I do. Your son, Daniel. I read it twice. Then I handed it to Margaret. She snorted. Oh, this is good. They're trying a different approach. The guilt trip, the medical crisis, the promise to pay you back this time. Betty, this is classic manipulation. What if Amber really is sick? Then they have health insurance through Daniel's job. Or they qualify for Medicaid. Or they can set up a payment plan with the hospital. What they can't do is emotionally blackmail you into funding their lives again. I knew Margaret was right. But God, it was hard. That little voice in my head, the one that had sustained me through years of single motherhood, kept whispering, what if it's true? What if she's really sick and you could help? And you don't. Patricia was more direct when I called her. Mrs. Patterson, this is a classic manipulation tactic. They escalated with aggression. It didn't work. So now they're trying sympathy. Notice anything about the letter? What? No medical details. No diagnosis name. No hospital name. If Amber were truly critically ill, don't you think he'd mention specifics? And $10,000? That's a very convenient round number that happens to be just under the limit that would require extensive documentation. She was right. The letter was designed to pull at my heartstrings without providing any verifiable information. I didn't respond to the letter. Instead, I went to my book club meeting on Wednesday night, something I'd been avoiding because I felt ashamed about my family situation. But Patricia had encouraged me to maintain my normal activities, to not let Daniel and Amber isolate me. The women welcomed me warmly. We discussed the Midnight Library, and during the break, I found myself sitting next to Helen, a retired school teacher in her 70s. You seem troubled, dear, she said gently. I don't know what came over me, but I told her everything. When I finished, I expected judgment or platitudes. Instead, Helen nodded knowingly. My daughter did the same thing to me, she said quietly. For 12 years. It took me having a stroke and nearly dying before I realized she only came around when she needed something. I cut her off 5 years ago. Hardest thing I ever did. Best thing I ever did. Do you ever regret it? Every day, Helen admitted. But I don't regret protecting myself. And you know what? After about a year, my daughter finally realized she actually had to stand on her own feet. She got a real job, stopped partying, and actually started acting like an adult. We have a relationship now, but it's on different terms. Healthier terms. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop enabling. Around the table, 3 other women nodded in recognition. Each had a similar story. An adult child who'd taken advantage, a family member who'd exploited them, a relationship that required boundaries they'd been afraid to set. You're not alone, Betty, another woman, Susan, said. And you're not a bad mother. You're a strong woman who's finally choosing herself. I went home that night feeling lighter than I had in weeks. I wasn't a monster. I wasn't cold. I was simply refusing to be used anymore. When Daniel called on Friday, I let it go to voicemail. His message was brief, cold. Got your silence loud and clear, Mom. We'll remember this. Good, I thought. Remember it well. Margaret took me out for lunch on Saturday, and we laughed for the first time in what felt like forever. I realized I'd been holding my breath for months, maybe years, waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting for Daniel to need something, waiting to be disappointed again. Now I was just breathing, and it felt like freedom. They showed up on Sunday evening, 3 weeks after the confrontation. I was preparing dinner, just a simple pasta dish for myself, when the doorbell rang. I'd grown accustomed to the silence, to the peace of my own company. Through the peephole, I saw them both. Daniel was holding flowers, cheap grocery store carnations. Amber was dressed more casually this time, in jeans and a soft sweater, her face arranged in what I supposed was meant to be a contrite expression. I didn't open the door immediately. Instead, I pulled out my phone and texted Margaret. They're here. Stay on text. Her response was immediate. Door chain. Phone recording. Do not let them in. I cracked the door, chain still attached. Yes? Mom? Daniel's voice was soft, gentle, the voice he'd used as a child when he wanted something. Please, can we talk? Really talk. No anger, no demands. Just talk. We can talk right here. Mom, please, it's cold out here. 5 minutes. That's all we're asking. Against every instinct Patricia had drilled into me, I opened the door. But I didn't invite them to sit. We stood in my entryway, an awkward triangle of tension. Daniel held out the flowers. These are for you, a peace offering. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and you were right. I haven't been a good son. I want to change that. I took the flowers, but said nothing. Amber stepped forward, her eyes glistening with what might have been real tears. Betty, I owe you an apology too. Those texts I sent were cruel. I was stressed about our situation and I took it out on you. That wasn't fair. What do you want? I asked quietly. Nothing, Daniel said quickly. We don't want anything. We just want to repair our relationship. That's all. You're my mom. I don't want to lose you over money. You already lost me when you told me not to call you anymore. Daniel flinched. I know, that was... God, Mom, I was so wrong. I've been going to therapy, actually, trying to work through my issues. And one of the things I realized is how much I've taken you for granted, how much I've hurt you. It sounded so sincere, so genuine. For a moment, just a moment, I wanted to believe it. That's good, Daniel. I'm glad you're getting help. We both are, Amber added. Couples counseling. Our therapist actually suggested we come here today to try to make amends face-to-face, not to ask for anything, but just to acknowledge the hurt we've caused. Your therapist suggested you come here? I repeated. Yes, Daniel nodded eagerly. She said that accountability is important, that we need to own our mistakes. What's her name? I asked. They both froze for just a fraction of a second. Just long enough. Dr. Morrison, Amber said smoothly. She's in Columbus. We drive there twice a week. That's quite a commitment, I said. Expensive too, I imagine. It's worth it, Daniel said. You're worth it, Mom. I looked at my son, really looked at him, at the way his eyes kept darting to the living room, probably calculating what he could see, what I might have that was valuable. At the way Amber's hand was on his arm, controlling, steadying him like a handler with a puppet. Here's the thing, Daniel, I said slowly. I believe you're in therapy. I believe you're struggling. What I don't believe is that you came here without wanting something. Mom, that's not. So let me ask you directly. What do you want? The masks began to slip. Daniel's earnest expression tightened. Amber's sweet smile became strained. Fine, Amber said, her voice losing its softness. You want honesty? Here's honesty. We're about to lose everything. Everything. Not because we're lazy or irresponsible, but because life is hard, and sometimes people need help. You're sitting on a comfortable pension and Social Security while your own son is about to be homeless. What kind of mother does that? The kind who's been giving her son money for 5 years without a single thank you, I said. We shouldn't have to thank you. Amber's voice rose. You're his mother. That's what mothers do. They help their children. Children, yes. Not 35-year-old men who are capable of working. Daniel's face flushed red. I am working, but it's not enough. Do you know what rent costs these days? Do you know what it's like to actually struggle? Yes, I said quietly. I raised you alone on a nurse's salary after your father left. I worked double shifts for years. I know exactly what it's like to struggle. That was different, Daniel shouted. You were supposed to take care of me. I was a kid. And what are you now, Daniel? Because from where I'm standing, you're a grown man who needs to take care of himself. Amber's face twisted into pure fury. You're a selfish, bitter old woman. Daniel was right all along. You're just a guilt-tripping manipulator who uses money to control people. I use money to control people? The irony was so stark, I almost laughed. Amber, do you hear yourself? You know what? Amber grabbed Daniel's arm. We're done here. Let's go. But Daniel wasn't moving. He was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Raw, unveiled hatred. I hope you die alone, he said quietly. I hope when you're old and sick and scared, there's nobody there. Because that's what you deserve. Then they were gone, the door slamming behind them. I stood in my entryway, holding the cheap flowers, my hands trembling now. But not with sadness. With rage. Pure, clean rage at the audacity, at the manipulation, at years of my love being twisted into a weapon against me. I threw the flowers in the trash and called Patricia. They came, I said when she answered. They tried to manipulate me again. It didn't work. Good, Patricia said firmly. Betty, I need you to hear this. You are not wrong. You are not cruel. You are simply refusing to be abused anymore. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in months. The call came from a number I didn't recognize on a Tuesday afternoon in late September. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Patterson? A woman's voice, professional and concerned. Yes? This is Karen Chen from Adult Protective Services. I'm calling regarding a report we received about your welfare. Do you have a moment to talk? My blood ran cold. What kind of report? We received a call from your son, Daniel Patterson, expressing concern that you may be experiencing cognitive decline and making unsafe financial decisions. He's worried about your well-being and has requested a welfare check. So this was their next move. If they couldn't guilt me or manipulate me, they'd try to have me declared incompetent. Ms. Chen, I said, keeping my voice steady, I can assure you that I am of sound mind. In fact, I believe this call is part of a pattern of harassment from my son and his wife, who have been financially exploiting me for years. There was a pause. Mrs. Patterson, these are serious allegations on both sides. Would you be willing to meet with me in person? I'd like to assess the situation myself. Yes. When would you like to come? Would tomorrow morning work? Around 10 a.m.? That would be fine. I'll have my attorney present as well, if that's acceptable. Another pause. That's certainly you're right, Mrs. Patterson. I called Patricia immediately after hanging up. She was furious, but not surprised. This is a common tactic, she said grimly. If they can get you declared incompetent, Daniel could potentially get power of attorney and access to your finances. We need to be prepared. Tomorrow morning, we document everything. That night, I organized every piece of evidence I'd collected. Bank statements showing years of one-way financial flow, the texts and emails, documentation from my doctor confirming I was in excellent cognitive health. I'd actually had a full neurological evaluation just 6 months ago as part of routine care. Character references from Margaret, from women at my book club, from my former colleagues at the hospital. Karen Chen arrived promptly at 10 a.m., a kind-faced woman in her 40s with a tablet and a measured professional demeanor. Patricia was already there, sitting beside me at my kitchen table. "Mrs. Patterson, I appreciate you meeting with me," Karen began. "I want to be clear that these visits are not adversarial. Our only goal is to ensure the safety and well-being of vulnerable adults." "I understand," I said. "What would you like to know?" For the next 30 minutes, Karen asked questions about my daily routine, my finances, my health, my mental state. I answered each one calmly, specifically, providing documentation where relevant. Patricia interjected occasionally with legal clarifications, but mostly she let me speak for myself. "You seem very organized," Karen observed. "I'm a retired nurse," I said. "Organization was part of my job for 40 years. Can you tell me about your relationship with your son?" This was it, the moment of truth. I told her everything. Not emotionally, not defensively, but factually. The pattern of financial requests, the absence of reciprocal care, the verbal abuse, the recent escalating harassment. I showed her the text from Amber, admitting Daniel had wanted to cut me off years ago, the letter promising repayment this time, the aftermath of the Sunday visit. Karen's expression grew more serious as I spoke. When I finished, she turned to Patricia. "And you're representing Mrs. Patterson in what capacity?" "Elder law," Patricia said. "Mrs. Patterson came to me several weeks ago after recognizing a pattern of financial exploitation. We've been working together to protect her assets and well-being." Karen nodded slowly, making notes on her tablet. Then she looked directly at me. "Mrs. Patterson, I'm going to be frank with you. In my professional opinion, you are clearly of sound mind. You're articulate, organized, and have taken appropriate steps to protect yourself from what does appear to be financial exploitation. However, I am obligated to follow up on this report thoroughly. That means I'll need to speak with your son as well." "I understand. I should warn you, this may escalate the situation." "It already is escalated," I said quietly. "I'm just finally fighting back." Karen left after an hour, promising to complete her report within 2 weeks. As soon as she was gone, Patricia turned to me. "You did beautifully. But Betty, you need to prepare yourself. They're going to be contacted by APS, and they're going to know it didn't work. Cornered animals are dangerous." She was right. That evening, Amber called from Daniel's phone. I didn't answer, but the voicemail she left was chilling. "You called social services on us? You're trying to make us look bad? You pathetic, vindictive bitch. You've just declared war. And trust me, Betty, you're going to lose. We know things about you. We have emails, texts, proof that you're an unfit, manipulative narcissist. Everyone is going to know what kind of person you really are. Your precious reputation, your friends, gone. We're going to destroy you." I saved the voicemail and forwarded it to Patricia. Her response was immediate. "Forward this to APS immediately. This is exactly what they need to see." 2 days later, Karen Chen called again. "Mrs. Patterson, I've completed my investigation. I'll be filing a report that finds no evidence of cognitive decline or need for intervention. However, I am also filing a separate report documenting what appears to be financial exploitation and harassment. This will be forwarded to the appropriate authorities." "Thank you," I whispered. "Mrs. Patterson, your son and his wife are very angry. Please be careful." I promised I would be, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I was ready. The certified letter arrived on a Monday morning in mid-October. It was addressed to Daniel and Amber Patterson, but it was sent to my address, probably because the address they'd given Adult Protective Services was outdated. I should have refused it, but curiosity got the better of me. I called Patricia. "Don't open it," she said immediately. "Mark it returned to sender and photograph it first. If they're using your address for official correspondence, that's another manipulation tactic." But the return address told me everything I needed to know. Regional eviction court. They'd been evicted. Finally, the consequences of their choices had caught up with them. That afternoon, Daniel's car appeared in my driveway. I was ready this time. Margaret was with me, and I'd already informed the police of the ongoing harassment. Officer Rodriguez had been very clear. If they show up and you ask them to leave and they don't, call us immediately. Daniel got out alone this time. No Amber. He looked terrible, unwashed, wearing the same clothes I'd seen him in weeks ago, his face gaunt and eyes wild. He pounded on the door. "Mom! Mom! Open the door! I know you're in there!" I cracked it open, chain attached. "Daniel, I'm calling the police if you don't leave immediately." "We're on the street. Do you understand that? We're homeless. Because of you." "No, Daniel, because of your choices." "My choices?" He slammed his fist against the doorframe. "You abandoned us. You cut us off. What were we supposed to do?" "Get jobs, pay your bills, live within your means. All the things I did when I was raising you alone." "I do have a job." "Then where does your money go, Daniel? I gave you $63,000 over 5 years. Where did it all go?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time, he had no answer. "That's what I thought," I said quietly. "You're my mother." His voice cracked, and for a moment, I saw desperation replace anger. "Doesn't that mean anything to you?" "It meant everything to me," I said. "For 35 years, being your mother was my identity. But you made it clear that I was only valuable when I was useful, when I had money to give. That's not being a mother, Daniel. That's being an ATM. So what, you're just going to let us be homeless?" "No. I'm going to let you experience the natural consequences of your decisions. You're an adult. You have options, shelters, social services, jobs. What you don't have anymore is me enabling your refusal to help yourself." "Amber was right about you," he said bitterly. "You're a cold, selfish bitch." "If standing up for myself makes me a bitch, then I'll accept that title." "Fine." He was crying now, ugly, angry tears. "Fine. You want me out of your life? Done. You'll never see me again. You'll never have grandchildren. You'll die alone and miserable, and it'll be your fault." "I'd rather die alone than live being used." He stood there for a long moment, waiting for me to break, to cave, to become the mother who always said yes. When I didn't, when I just stood there behind my door with my chain lock engaged, something in him shattered. "I hate you," he whispered. "I hate you so much." "I know," I said sadly, "but I love myself more than I hate being hated by you." He left. I watched through the window as he sat in his car for 10 minutes, head on the steering wheel. Then he drove away. 3 weeks later, Patricia called with news. "Daniel's been arrested," she said. "Fraud. Apparently, he and Amber had been running a scam, taking out credit cards in other people's names, including yours." My blood ran cold. "Mine?" 3 credit cards, total debt of $47,000. They'd been making minimum payments using the money you gave them, but once that stopped, the cards defaulted and the investigation started. The good news is that you're a victim here, not liable for the debt. The bad news is that your son is facing serious charges. I should have felt something. Sadness, guilt, maternal instinct to protect him. Instead, I felt only a grim validation. "There's more," Patricia continued. "Amber's been arrested too. Turns out she has a record. This isn't her first time running this kind of scam. She's done it to 3 previous partners. Daniel was just her latest mark. So that was the truth. My son hadn't just been a bad son. He'd been a criminal, enabled and manipulated by a con artist. What happens now, I asked. They'll both likely face prison time. Daniel might get a lesser sentence if he cooperates. But Betty, he's going to be out of your life for quite a while. I waited for the grief to hit. It didn't. Instead, I felt light. Free. Thank you for everything, Patricia. You saved yourself, Betty. I just helped with the paperwork. When the official court documents arrived, confirming that Daniel and Amber had fraudulently used my identity and that I bore no responsibility for their debts, I filed them carefully in my documentation folder. Then I closed the folder and put it away. I was done. 6 months after the arrests, I stood in my kitchen making coffee for 5 people, something I hadn't done in years. Margaret was bringing pastries. Helen from book club was coming with her daughter, who'd recently reconciled with her after their own troubled period. Patricia was stopping by with her wife, whom I'd met at a charity event last month. Susan from book club was bringing her famous scones. My home, once a tomb of silence and waiting, had become alive again. Betty, your garden looks amazing, Margaret called from the back porch. I'd taken up gardening in the spring, transforming my neglected backyard into something beautiful. Tomatoes, herbs, flowers. Things I'd never had time for when I was constantly worrying about Daniel's next crisis. It's my therapy, I said, bringing out a tray of coffee mugs. Cheaper than a therapist and better for my mental health. Everyone laughed. We gathered around my dining room table, a table that had sat empty for so many holidays when Daniel had canceled at the last minute, and talked about everything and nothing: books, politics, recipes, grandchildren. Helen's daughter had just had a baby, and Helen was glowing with joy at actually being included in her grandchild's life. "How are you doing, really?" Patricia asked quietly during a lull in conversation. "I'm good," I said, and I meant it. Better than I've been in years, actually. It was true. In the months since cutting Daniel out of my life, I'd rediscovered who I was beyond being his mother. I'd joined a painting class at the community center. I'd increased my volunteer hours at the animal shelter. I was even fostering an elderly cat named Barnaby, who'd been abandoned by his previous owners. I'd reconnected with cousins I'd lost touch with. I'd even started dating. Nothing serious, just coffee dates with a retired teacher named Robert, who made me laugh and never once asked me for money. My bank account, for the first time in 5 years, was growing instead of shrinking. I'd booked a trip to Maine for next month, something I'd always wanted to do but never could, because there was always some emergency that needed funding. "Have you heard anything about Daniel?" Susan asked gently. "He's serving 3 years, I said. "Patricia keeps me updated on the legal side, but I haven't spoken to him directly. I send him money for commissary once a month through the prison system, but no letters, no visits." "You still send him money?" Margaret looked surprised. $50 a month, I confirmed. "Not because he deserves it, but because I'm not him. I won't let someone go hungry if I can help it." But that's where it ends. No bail money, no support for legal appeals, no promises of help when he gets out. Patricia nodded approvingly. "That's healthy. You're helping him survive without enabling him." "What about Amber?" Helen asked. 5 years, I said. She had priors, so her sentence was longer. Apparently, Daniel's attorney is trying to argue that she manipulated him, that he was a victim too. Maybe there's some truth to that. But he was an adult making adult choices, and he hurt me long before Amber entered the picture. The conversation moved on to lighter topics, but later, after everyone had left, I stood in my clean kitchen and looked at the photos on my refrigerator. I'd taken down all the old pictures of Daniel. In their place were new memories. Margaret and me at a concert, my painting class group, Barnaby the cat sleeping in a sunbeam, Robert and me at a coffee shop, both of us mid-laugh, a new life built from the ashes of the old one. Meanwhile, Daniel's life had collapsed entirely. I knew this not because I stalked his social media or asked around, but because Patricia kept me informed of legal developments, and occasionally details emerged. Amber had filed for divorce from prison, trying to distance herself from Daniel in hopes of a reduced sentence. It hadn't worked. Their apartment had been cleared out when they were evicted, and whatever possessions they'd had were gone, sold to pay debts, or simply lost. Daniel's car had been repossessed. His job, whatever it had been, was obviously gone. The friends who'd enabled them, who'd probably benefited from their scams, had disappeared. No one visited them in prison. No one sent them money except me, and my monthly $50 was likely the only thing keeping them both from complete destitution. Daniel's mother-in-law, Amber's mother, had reportedly told investigators that she'd warned Daniel about Amber years ago, that she'd known her daughter was trouble. But Daniel hadn't listened. He'd been blinded by whatever combination of love, lust, or weakness had made him vulnerable to her manipulation. I didn't feel satisfaction at their downfall. I wasn't that person, but I didn't feel guilt either. Their consequences were their own making. One evening, I received a letter forwarded from the prison, Daniel's handwriting. I held it for a long time before opening it. "Mom, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to write back. But I needed you to know that I finally understand what you were trying to tell me about responsibility, about consequences, about what it means to actually stand on your own feet. Prison is hell, but maybe I needed hell to wake up. Amber filed for divorce. Good. She used me like I used you. I see that now. I'm sorry. For everything. For taking you for granted. For the things I said. For the pain I caused. I don't know if sorry is enough. It probably isn't. When I get out, I don't expect anything from you. I don't expect a relationship or money or help. I just hope that maybe someday you can think of me without anger. I love you. I should have said it more. Daniel. I read it 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer. Maybe someday I'd respond. Maybe someday we'd rebuild something. But not today. Today, I was choosing myself. And it felt like the most loving thing I'd ever done. They say blood is thicker than water. But the full quote is, "The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. The bonds we choose are stronger than the ones we're born into." I learned that being a good mother doesn't mean saying yes to everything. Sometimes it means saying no. Sometimes it means letting your child fall so they can learn to stand. I lost my son, but I found myself. Was I wrong? Was I cruel? You tell me. What would you have done? Would you have kept giving until there was nothing left? Or would you have drawn the line like I did? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to choose between family and self-preservation? Share your story. You might help someone else find their courage. And if my story resonated with you, please subscribe, because everyone deserves to know they're not alone in their battles. Thank you for listening to mine. God bless you.